Okay.
Okay, are you ready for me?
Yep. We're,
Okay.
we're live.
All right. Do I need to hit present? Does that matter?
I can see you. Yep.
Okay. So we are at the state contest in Huntsville at Sam Houston State University. This is the agricultural issues team. Their debate is whether or not our school should introduce another hive to our existing hard hat apiary that we have on campus. The goal of the contest is that you have 3 pros and 3 cons, and then they debate that as a forum. And then at the end of the contest, typically they have 5 minutes worth of questions. However, at the state level, they will be given 10 minutes worth of questioning. So our goal today is that they are fully prepared for accurate answers to questions. And so, and also input on their presentation. At this point, we probably don't want to change too terrible much, but they present at just after 2 this afternoon. And I think they are ready to begin. Does that sound okay, Dr. Slater?
Yep, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. You want to introduce yourselves first?
Yep. We just do it. Wait, so they're all here? Yes.
They are. You're live. Just introduce yourselves. And then we need to set up like you're at the contest.
All right. I'm Brampton Collins. I'm a sophomore. I'm Clifton Early. I'm a junior.
I'm Jane Johnson and I'm a senior.
I'm Carson Armstrong. I'm a junior.
I'm Adeline Cindy and I'm a junior.
I'm Parker Combs and I'm a sophomore. I'm Sean Richardson and I'm a senior.
And you are White Oak FFA Ag Issues team.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Like this?
Have you guys heard about all the baby hives up at the White Oak Apiary? I think there's 7 and they want to add even more.
Yeah, I wanted to see for myself yesterday that there were so many of those dang buzzards. There must have been a million.
That is just ridiculous. We don't even need all those bees. The native bee pollinated enough already.
I completely agree. We can't let those bumblebugs share our ecosystem. Whoa. What do you think? Y'all are.
We're putting in a new hive.
There are more students on the White Oak beekeeping team than ever.
We have students who come in. No, you can't. Hold my number.
7 hives is plenty.
You honeybees are ruining the environment.
Hey guys, whoa. What is going on here?
We're in a hive.
Ladies, calm down. Did you forget we have guests? Put on your positive professional pants and let's get this show on the road. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the White Oak Agricultural Issues Symposium. Today, our team is diving into a question that's buzzing across agriculture and conservation alike: the role of honeybees in our world. On one hand, honeybees are heroes, right? Fueling agriculture, boosting the economy, and sweetening our lives. On the other hand, they may be pushing native pollinators to the sidelines, altering fragile ecosystems that native wildlife and flora depend on for their very own survival. So, here's the real debate. Should White Oak FFA add another hive to our own hard hat honey apiary, or will the addition of one more hive tip the balance of nature right here at home?
Imagine walking into your local grocery store and seeing half the produce section gone. No apples, melons, or berries. Without honeybees, our shelves would just look emptier. Prices would skyrocket, and suddenly, fresh food becomes a luxury. But it's not only produce that would take a hit. Meat and dairy would also be affected due to the fact that honeybees pollinate the crops livestock depend on for food.
Honeybees pollinate over 90 crops in the U.S., fueling everything from almonds to blueberries. That work adds up to $50 billion, and yes, that's billion with a B. and studies prove that even while pollinators, fields without managed honeybees fall way short on yield. In fact, entire industries like almonds in California would collapse without them.
The USDA makes it clear, honeybees keep our food supply both diverse and affordable. Closer to home, they pollinate our school gardens too. Prove that their impact stretches from our campus to the country. And when you think about global food security, honeybees aren't just helpers. They're lifelines for billions of people. Simply put, honeybees are essential to feeding the world.
Wow, that's a lot of impact. With rising prices and inflation, a fruitful harvest is very important for our nation. Now, let's hear a strong point from our coincide.
Sure, honeybees help the crops, but let's not forget they aren't even from here. European settlers brought them over in the 1600s, and adding one hive means bringing in anywhere from 15 to 50,000 bees, competing with natives for every single flower in sight. That kind of competition can leave natives hungry and ecosystems struggling.
Exactly. Natives call them white man's slide because they sit as outsiders on this continent. And while the pro side brags about essential honeybees, let's be clear. The U.S. already has 4,000 native species of bees, including 700 right here in the state of Texas, that have kept ecosystems thriving long before imports buzzed in. Many of these species are now declining, and honeybees aren't helping.
Many native bees are even more efficient pollinators, like bumblebees, which can do buzz pollination that honeybees just simply can't. So the real question is this: by propping up our fields with honeybees, are we overloading fields? By overloading our fields with honeybees, are we propping up an imported species at the expense of silencing the native pollinators that surely belong here?
Thank you, speakers. So the question we face is this: how do we balance the clear benefits of honeybees with potential costs to our native pollinators? Now, let's hear more from each side as we dig deeper into this buzzing debate.
Our Harvard Honey Apiary isn't just about honey. It's a living classroom for our school, FFA chapter, and community. By pairing our hives with wildflower patches, we create many win-win situations, including plants get pollinated, native plants get restored, and students get to see environmental stewardship in action.
According to the National Honey Board, student-led apiary projects have a boosted STEM engagement by 30% in pilot programs. Just imagine the hands-on science, technology, engineering, and math a student can gain by managing a hive. You don't get that from the textbook. And those lessons stick with them long after high school, shaping careers, families, and communities.
And don't overlook the leadership side. Running an apiary teaches patience, responsibility, and business management. Students monitor hive health, track production, all the while solving real-world problems. Adding another hive isn't just about money. It's about education, conservation, and building the next generation of environmentally conscious leaders.
Teaching the next generation of environmental leaders is crucial for the survival of our ecosystem and our world today. Adding another hive means hands-on STEM learning, conservation, and a thriving school garden. Let's hear from the other side of this debate.
Adding another hive might make a flashy classroom project, but let's be real about what honeybees bring with them: diseases and parasites. One sick hive today, even a perfectly healthy looking hive, can bring new diseases like the four-ring disease and nosema. And one sick hive today can ripple into declining native populations tomorrow.
Totally. Research shows honeybees act as vectors for disease delivery, weakening native populations, reducing biodiversity, and threatening long-term ecological stability. So while introducing another hive might boost STEM engagement or pollinate school crops, we're left asking, what happens when short-term gains create long-term ecological costs?
And remember, this isn't just a bee problem. Weak native pollinator populations harm the plants they pollinate, the animals that rely on those crops, and the balance of entire ecosystems. Once these ecosystems shift, recovery is slow or even impossible.
Adding another hive could inspire the next generation of environmental leaders or could put hundreds of native pollinators at risk. The question is buzzing loud. Which path should we take?
Honeybees give us more than just pollination. They produce honey, beeswax, and propolis, fueling industries from food to skincare. These products generate nearly $300 million a year for U.S. economy annually. That's no pocket change, that's a powerhouse built upon bees.
And honey isn't just delicious, it drives domestic sales and exports that support beekeepers, food processors, and retailers. Beeswax adds even more value, showing up in cosmetics, candles, and even eco-friendly fruit wraps, proving these literally power a sustainable market.
And don't overlook propolis, a resin bees use to protect their hives that humans now use in supplements, remedies, and skincare. Beyond the profits, these products tie our students to lessons in biology, business, and entrepreneurship. An apiary doesn't just make honey, it creates opportunities.
Whoa, hold on a second. Y'all are telling us that honeybees are economic superheroes? What about the native bees that don't get you a paycheck?
Are we supposed to ignore them just because they don't trap near wax? And let's be honest, if you're counting dollars, then you better count the costs.
Every new hive risks swiping out hundreds of native pollinators that actually keep ecosystems alive. Now that's a bill we can't afford to ignore.
Alright, team, let's hit the pause button for a second. Passion is buzzing, and that's great. But everyone deserves a chance to state their points without interruptions. Now, back to our pro side.
Thank you, Carson. Honeybees aren't just pollinators. They produce valuable goods, drive the economy, and play a key role in our school community. Every jar of honey or block of beeswax represents not just a product, but a story of sustainability, innovation, and the connection between agriculture and consumers.
Adding another hive to the hardhat honey apiary doesn't just support pollination or STEM education. It connects students to real-world economic impact, sustainability, and entrepreneurship.
Beyond pollination and products, students gain hands-on experience in biology, business, and leadership. Lessons no textbook can teach. They're not only studying pollinators, they're running projects, solving problems, and practicing leadership in ways that prepare them for college, careers, and community service. So the real question isn't just should we add another hive, it's how can we ignore the economic, educational, and ecological benefits of working with these incredible insects.
Thank you. Jada, does your team have another fun point?
We sure do, Carson. Native pollinators like bumblebees, butterflies, and other insects have delicate partnerships with the plants, and adding another hive on natural land isn't harmless fun. These non-natives can crash that party and disrupt plant pollinator networks. And that balance breaks the ripple effects that across the entire ecosystem, from wildflowers to the wildlife that depends on them.
Honeybees are generalist foragers, visiting both native and invasive flowers. This can help invasive species gain the upper hand by outcompeting natives, altering soil chemistry, and blocking sunlight. And once invasive species gain the upper hand, it's almost impossible to pull them back, blocking ecosystems in a downward spiral.
Native pollinators also avoid flowers constantly visited by honeybees, reducing pollination for plants that rely on them. The result? Altered habitats, declining biodiversity, and long-term ecosystem impacts that are slow, sometimes impossible to reverse. And the worst part is, these losses aren't just environmental issues. They threaten food webs, local agriculture, and even the resilience of our community landscapes.
Hey now, we're also restoring habitats with wildflower patches, which are giving more native bees just as much of a chance, alongside our honeybees.
A wildfire patch can help, yes, but it can't undo the ecosystem ripple effects caused by 1,000 honeybees visiting both native and invasive plant species.
Careless hive placement can cause way more harm than good.
So the real question for our hardhat honey apiary is this: are we enriching nature or unintentionally hijacking? And remember, it's not just the honey, it's the harmony.
Thank you, speakers. We've heard powerful arguments on both sides. Support for honeybees as agricultural engines and hands-on educators, and concerns about their impacts on native pollinators and ecosystems. Now, it's time for each side to summarize their case before we leave it up to the audience to decide. Pro side, you're up first.
First, honeybees are critical pollinators. Right here at White Oak, they keep our shelves stocked, keep prices within reach, and give students a visible connection between agriculture and their food. And let's not forget, honeybees also contribute billions of dollars to agriculture annually.
Second, our apiary is way more than a box of bees. It's a living classroom. Students learn STEM concepts, responsibility, and environmental stewardship while actively managing hives. They practice math while tracking hive growth, apply biology while checking bee health, and gain leadership skills as they work together. The apiary teaches more than science. It prepares students for careers, families, and communities.
And finally, honeybees do more than pollination. They create products of value and opportunity. Honey, beeswax, and propolis support local economies, fuel industries from food to skincare, and tie our students to lessons in biology, business, and entrepreneurship. Managed wisely, an apiary is more than an agricultural project. It's a training ground for sustainability, leadership, and innovation. Honeybees aren't just insects. They're educators, economic contributors, and partners in our future.
1. Let's not forget, honeybees aren't from here. And adding one hive means bringing in anywhere from 15 to 50,000 bees, competing with over 4,000 U.S. native bee species, including hundreds right here in the state of Texas. And when honeybees monopolize core resources, natives get pushed aside, their behavior changes, and survival becomes even harder. Every single flower that honeybees take is one less opportunity for those natives to thrive.
2, every new hive, even healthy looking ones, is introducing foreign diseases like deformed wing virus and nosema. And this can risk the lives of many native species.
3, hive placement matters. Setting hives near natural lands disrupts plant pollinator networks and fuels the spread of invasive species. Honeybees as generalists pollinate both native and invasive plants. That means invaders get stronger, displacing natives, altering soil, blocking sunlight, and disrupting water cycles. Once these ecosystems shift, recovery is slow or even impossible. Adding another hive may help us today, but it risks reshaping habitats for several generations to come.
So, should we add honeybees to the mix? The answer isn't black and yellow. It's about balance, care, and long-term stewardship. And after today's debate, the choices are clearer than ever, even if the solution isn't simple. Now it's your turn. Are you ready to join the buzz and dig into, should White Oak FFA add another hive to our own hard-hat mini apiary? Will that choice tip the balance of nature right here at home? Thank you. We now stand ready for questions.
Okay, are there any questions in the chat?
I don't see any.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions either. Oh, I got one right here. Okay, the Kirk said recent honeybee colony loss has been very high. What specific steps will you do to protect your colonies?
Some of the steps that we take to protect our colonies would be to check them every once in a while, make sure they're being healthy and getting around. And then one thing we do is we treat them for mites and
And then, of course, this time of year, whenever they're cold, we'll give them sugar water. That way, they have plenty of food and plenty of resources.
Okay, Suzanne said, have you done any research or found any research that native bees are susceptible to varroa mites?
To mites.
To mites.
Native bees. So like a bumblebee, are they susceptible to varroa mites?
So yes, bumblebees are susceptible to mites. They're susceptible to a lot of diseases that honeybees and animals that aren't usually from that area. So bringing in mites, they are put at risk for mites.
Well, and just to clarify, you mean they're not susceptible to the mites, but the viruses that they get transmitted from the mites to the native pollinators.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Freddie, to the anti-honeybee side, do you think we are beyond the point of no return?
I think there's always a way to bring it back, but the like effects of it are pretty bad for the native bees. But there's always a way to bring it back by putting in those gardens and honeybee hotels like we're putting in our community garden. There's always a way to help the native bees, but the impact is pretty strong.
And of course, it will never go back to how it was, but we can at least help it to get better.
Okay, in 2009, a fossil of a native honeybee, Apis nearctica, was found in Nevada. Native pollinator group could change your thoughts on honeybee versus native pollinators. So, I mean, basically the question is, since they found this fossil that provides evidence that honeybees could potentially be native to North America, would that change, I guess, your thoughts on the native pollinator side?
It would change a little bit, but there are like certain types of honeybees that could be from here, but we know that most were brought over from different parts of the world, including Europe. So the bee might have been brought here by chance, but it is a good chance that it could have been native, and we just don't know it yet.
And then it's a fossil now, so it's no longer around either.
Okay, Garrick, with honeybees being present for hundreds of years, do you think the ecological effect is already done and will require more hands-on management from beekeeper to repair?
I think for the most part, the quote-unquote damage is already done, but there's always ways to go back and fix that. So, like the things that we have said before, like putting in those honeybee hotels, planting those native plants, and giving them gardens to allow them to pollinate.
So, Kirk, Texas is recognized as an Africanized bee state. What are your strategies to keep your colonies from becoming Africanized?
So African bees were brought over from Africa, but we've noticed that they've been moving up a little bit. But one way to protect your hives from becoming Africanized is to check them regularly. You can tell the difference between a lot of bees based off of size and color. So making sure that you weed out all of the non-hive bees is important to making sure that the African bees don't take over.
You can also insert a new queen. Like, we tend to like the ones with Italian genetics because they are nicer and sweeter, and they're not quite as mean as bees that have Africanized.
Okay, ProSide mentions all the benefits of maintaining a hive. Could we collect wax and or propolis from native bees?
Realistically speaking, we might be able to, but it'd be very little to the amount that we could get from honeybees. So it's better to honestly just leave them alone compared to reaping the benefits off of honeybees.
It's hard to take stuff from native pollinators because they're not like, we don't keep them in a hive. You find them under like trees and shrubs and stuff. And for us to go in there and mess with their hive, when it's better just for us to leave them alone and just use our honeybees because they ain't gonna produce as much as honeybees will.
Honeybees have been bred specifically for thousands of years by Egyptians, Romans, Greeks, and pretty much all over the world to produce as much honey as they do and to produce extra propolis and wax so that people can harvest it. But native bees haven't had that input from people.
There's only about, I believe the number is 5% of honeybees that can actually produce enough honey that is actually helpful to humans. And the other 95% can't produce enough that we can use.
Let's see. Garrick said, is there a safety concern from students and faculty on school property in regards to having additional colonies? His follow-up was, and if so, how do you plan on addressing those concerns?
So obviously there's going to be concerns with people being allergic and bees getting into places where they shouldn't be, but it's just a matter of us telling everyone that the honeybees are there and advocating for them and knowing that the bees are there and knowing that people who are allergic should most likely stay away, especially like the elementary students should stay away from our honeybee hives, at least for now with that list.
And then we do have our hives a little ways away from the campus. But again, that doesn't really stop them. For example, one of our 7 hives swarmed, and we think we found it in the elementary beds, but we're dealing with it.
I have a question. So I guess when you think about native pollinators, I guess one, how much do we know about native pollinators, not only in Texas, but across the US? Like, do we have a good idea about the native pollinators? And then 2, what are the major drivers of native pollinator losses and becoming endangered? Like would your argument be that it's primarily honeybees, or are there other drivers of native pollinator losses?
So there are a lot of things that can affect the native bees being moved. Honeybees are one, but a lot of plantation farms can also be another due to the fact that native bees can't pollinate all the crops that honeybees do.
And another one of those things would be deforestation, so building new homes and taking away those bees' habitat.
Urban landscapes are also a very big part. If you see big cities like Dallas, there's not going to be a lot of honeybees because there's so much concrete everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So honeybees aren't the only reason why they're becoming few and far between, but they are a very large reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I would mention is, 75% of native pollinators are ground nesters. So you guys mentioned habitat fragmentation, also, pesticides. Some of these pesticides can be long-lived in the soil in other parts. Kirk said, how much expense will adding a new hive add to your budget, and where will you get the money?
Adding another hive could be anywhere between $300 to $600, and we got all our hives from like donations from like people around to help us. And as of right now, I think we're just gonna keep getting more donations, or we'll eventually get our own.
We have gotten a lot of our items through grant money from the foundation, Texas Foundation.
National FFA.
National FFA. So we got a lot of help from that grant, and then in the future, hopefully we plan on getting more hives through grants and donations.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, really the majority of people listening to this or will listen to this are beekeepers. So, and a lot of beekeepers obviously have bees for different reasons, but maybe they also want to support the native pollinators. So practically, what could a beekeeper do to support native pollinators, other than just not having bees altogether?
Some of the ways that beekeepers could help those natives would be leaving little logs and leaving things for the native bees to live in. And then they can also plant those gardens of native plants and make them separate from what the honeybees pollinate, and just kind of restoring the native area, and also including those honeybee hotels in where they live.
But also at the end of the day, the best thing to do, honestly, for native bees is to just kind of leave them alone, because they have been working on their own for thousands of years, and so they'll keep them with the ways that they've done stuff in the past.
One of the best ways we can help honeybees is just to leave them alone, or native bees, my bad, native bees. But like we mentioned previously, during the winter, we can help them by bringing them sugar water, because they don't move much because it's cold outside. They just stay inside and buzz to warm up. So the best thing we can do is just leave them alone, and during the winter, bring them sugar water.
Yeah, and one thing you could also mention is, I guess the major concern is not necessarily the over competition, but more the viruses. Beekeepers could better manage their viral levels, for example, or breed bees that can tolerate some of the viruses, and that could be one way to deal with some of the issues, not only for the beekeepers but also indirectly onto the native pollinators. Freddie, do you think we can feed the nation solely on native pollinators and wind-pollinated crops?
So native pollinators actually don't produce a lot of honey, so it would be really, really hard for us to feed the country their honey or propolis, because they don't produce nearly as much as the honeybees do.
And I would also say it'd be really difficult because most of the economy is based off of plantation farming, and that's for the honeybees. Because as a country, we use a lot of excess crops and stuff that we didn't always have. So I don't think it would be 100% possible for native bees to solely keep up the crop economy.
Personally, I would say yes, but that's because I used to give a speech over how the vast majority of food poverties and food deserts aren't actually caused by the production of food, but by the waste of it. I think the number upped itself from 85% a few years ago to 90% this year. But 90% of crops get wasted or thrown away before they ever even make it to the supermarkets and stores. So I would say yes, because such a large number of food is getting produced and just isn't getting sold. So I don't think the honeybees are necessarily required to continue producing that number of food if we just stop wasting so much of it.
Well, let's say, do an example. So let's say take honeybees out of the whole kind of crop system. Could native pollinators replace that pollination, even if there is that food waste problem? Like is there a way to supplement these areas with managed native pollinators or plant forage to increase native pollinators to support about 1/3 of what we eat that's directly pollinated by honeybees?
The native bees will never be able to pollinate quite as much as the honeybees, just because of how many honeybees there are and how many have been introduced.
Okay, so Omar had a question. Honeybees are among the most widely used and broadly managed insects for commercial pollination. However, that efforts currently exist to support and scale conservation or management programs for native pollinators at a large scale. Or what efforts?
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. Yeah. So what efforts currently exist to support conservation of native pollinators on sort of a large scale?
We can help by not planting as many large plantation crops as well as deforestation. I mean, there's on a large scale level, it would have to be lots of land and lots of habitats that are being saved or put aside for native pollinators to have a wide term effect.
Yeah, are there any specific programs? I think the question is, I think like Bee City USA, Xerces. I'm not sure exactly what Xerces are doing. Maybe it's more focused on habitat improvement. But are you guys aware of any current programs like focus on conservation of native bees?
Most likely there is, but none that we have researched, so we'll have to get back to you on.
Scouting America, formerly the Boy Scouts of America, does have several programs known for conservation. In fact, the entire program's biggest thing is conservation. I've done several projects in it myself, and there are a lot of programs in there to help native pollinators or native insects. I believe the venturing part of the program allows larger animals as well, but they have a lot of programs and resources to help out insects and a lot of native pollinators.
Okay, got a lot of questions coming in. Let's do this one. How many centuries does it take for imported bees to be considered native? Haven't these bees adapted to the environment and vice versa? Are there things we can do to help all the pollinators to coexist?
So this is one that I actually researched just a few weeks ago. They'll never be considered native to the US. They were imported to Europe originally from Asia and Africa. So after thousands and thousands of years of being in Europe, they're considered native, but it's never supposed to be considered native to the US due to the fact that every honeybee or such a large number of honeybees are kept on farms and in personal hives, and they aren't really going out and making their own hives. Of course, there are a few, but they'll never be considered native.
Kirk, how do you think the development of self-pollinated plant species, such as almonds, will eventually limit the value of honeybees as pollinators? Yeah, so just a little context, the almond industry, they're trying to breed for an almond that self-pollinates, so there's a limited need for honeybees. And this could also be, used for other crops that really depend on honeybee pollination.
I mean, that would of course bring the need for honeybees down, but I feel like since I don't think that'd be possible for every single crop, honeybees are still needed. That would also end up helping the natives in the long run because it would allow them to live more instead of the honeybees taking over their area.
But that's just an assumption that we can make. That would be something that we would have to really pull back and actually scientifically check on due to the fact that it hasn't fully 100% happened yet.
I think with the increased demand of honey for allergies and I don't think there would ever be a lack of right. I mean, there's always going to be that economic drive, and if anything, I feel like those health benefits for the honey. I feel like you could correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Slater, but that those are on the rise and a higher demand than ever. Mm-hmm. Even if it were self-pollinated crops, that we would still have demand for honey products. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, especially here in Texas, people have bees for a lot of different reasons. Honey production is a really major part of it. And one reason we have so many more colonies in the US is because of pollination. I mean, that's why we have probably 1 million more colonies than we should have, is probably because of, commercial pollination. But there'll always be a demand for honey production. And even in Texas, we have that egg valuation. So property tax reasons, people have bees. So
very important tax exemption. Yeah, forgot about that.
Suzanne says Neuroa, which is a brand new product to treat varroa mites. It essentially sterilizes the female mites so they cannot lay eggs. if enough beekeepers, especially commercial beekeepers, were to use this product for their integrated pest management strategy, we may be able to lessen the effect of viruses caused by the mites.
That I haven't heard of that product. That's amazing.
Yeah, it just got approved in Texas a few days ago, so it's a brand new treatment. But yeah, really kind of the point was, there isn't a lot of evidence for competition with bees. There's a little bit, but the biggest issue is definitely the viruses and pathogens that are transmitted to the native pollinators through the flower sources, right? So if beekeepers can better manage varroa mites, and I know a lot of them want to be treatment free and have beekeepers naturally adapt to the varroa mites and the viruses, but the biggest issue is, if you leave your bees untreated, that can have this offshoot effects like the native pollinators I'd mentioned, like the viruses that the native pollinators can't deal with.
And what was that treatment called?
Neuroa. So it's varroa with an N.
Neuroa?
Yep.
Varroa mite is with the V. The treatment is Naroa with an N. Naroa.
Heather had a question. Can you explain the difference between a native species versus invasive species versus naturalized species?
So natural species are species that have been in one place their entire lives. Like that's where we, at least as far as we know, have originated from. Whereas invasive species are species that have been taken or that have been like gathered over and are like forcing the native species out of their homes. And then naturalized, I guess we could consider honeybees almost naturalized because they've been around in the US for so long, but are not actually from here, but they're also not invasive necessarily anymore.
Okay, Garrick, how are the human-oriented issues like urban spread, deforestation, chemical use affecting honeybees versus pollinators or native pollinators? Like are they having a bigger effect on the native pollinators versus honeybees? A similar effect?
They're having a much larger effect on native bees due to the fact that, as far as I'm aware, there's no beekeepers for native bees, but there are beekeepers for honeybees. So they're keeping their habitats and their homes. While they might have slightly less food, but the native pollinators are losing their homes as well as their food.
And pesticide use is definitely affecting honeybees more because they're the ones who are doing those plantation crops and pollinating those. So the pesticide is more affecting the honeybees, but everything else, like the naturalization and urbanization of areas, is affecting the native bees instead.
Okay, I'm just going through here if there's any other questions. I think that's everything, unless anybody else has any other questions.
I was just going to make a comment, Garrett.
Yeah, go for it.
Y'all did a good job. Thank you so much.
You guys did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody that joined.
Well, perfect. Yeah. I'm gonna have this all posted on YouTube, so if you had a chance to watch the live session, it'll be on YouTube. So if you guys want to share it with anybody, feel free to share it. It'll be at Tamu Bees. But really appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.